Hello everybody and welcome. Tonight, if you're listening live on the radio or joining us for our Facebook feed, we appreciate you being here tonight. My name is Randy Cawthon. I'm the managing editor of the Spencer Daily Reporter here in Spencer, Iowa. And tonight we're hosting the, I guess it's the 4th District GOP primary here for the U.S. Congressional seat. And we have all 5 of our candidates on the ballot on the GOP ticket here tonight participating. Also have media panels who tonight will be participating in the questioning of the candidates, along with a few questions have been submitted from audience members via email. And real quick, I'd like to take an opportunity to introduce our media panel tonight. Of course, from the Storm Lake Pilot Tribune, Managing Editor Dana Larson, Managing Editor of the Dickinson County News, Russ Mitchell, and News Director for the Spencer Radio Group, Matt McWilliams. So thank you all for being here this evening. Also like to take a moment here to introduce our candidates quickly before we get to the questions. First, we have Stephen Reeder, who is from Arnold's Park here. He is a commercial and industrial real estate brokerage at NV Dodge Commercial and CBRE. He has had numerous commercial, industrial, and land developments over the 35-year career and is a small business entrepreneur. Also joining us tonight, State Senator Randy Feenstra from Hull, Iowa, a former businessman, current teacher at Dordt University, and Iowa State Senator. Jeremy Taylor from Sioux City. He's a U.S. Army National Guard Major and Chaplain, Energy and Environmental Specialist for the Sioux City Schools. Bret Richards from Irwin, Iowa, CEO of Country Stores, a chain of convenience stores, and board chair of the Manning Regional Healthcare Center and a Creighton University professor. And incumbent Steve King from Chiron. He started King Construction, a successful earth-moving and underground utility business in 1975. And after a successful transition to his oldest son, the group continues to be payroll for 45 years now. And we're going to jump right into the questioning. Each candidate will have an opportunity to answer the question in a 2-minute time frame. And after all of the candidates have had an opportunity to answer the question, each will be afforded the opportunity for a 30-second rebuttal if they so choose. We're going to open up things with the opening comments, and we will start with Stephen Reeder.
I'd like to thank all the media that sponsored this event this evening. Welcome Steve, Bret, Jeremy, and Randy for being here tonight to join us for this event. I decided to run for Congress because my wife Brenda and I are patriots that love God, this country, and we love Iowa. And over the last several years, I've been working hard and paying attention quite closely to politics and watched this gradual erosion of our U.S. Constitution from a radical left that had another agenda in mind. And I also saw a Congress that was frustrating to me that they weren't getting things done. Even in a time when the Republicans held the House and the Senate and the White House, we still were spending more than we were taking in, and we needed a balanced budget. I've been in business for 35 years, creating LLCs, developing real estate and commercial and industrial real estate. And I've always balanced my checkbooks. And I see all these sharp businesses on the main streets of Iowa that do the same. And I don't understand why Washington could not do the same. So I decided to run, and since I got into the race, I've got overwhelming support from friends and family, colleagues, and people I've done business with that were excited that a businessman would get in and represent the people of Iowa. I have a real simple message of limited government, more faith, and more freedom. This is a message that I hear resonating across all of Iowa, the 4th District. And I want to take that to Washington.
Next up with the opening remarks will be Randy Feenstra.
Thank you so much for having me tonight. I am Randy Feenstra. I am a Christian, a husband, a father, and a constitutional conservative Republican. I'm running for Congress in the 4th District because we need a seat at the table. We need an effective conservative that has done proven results. To me, this election is about real results, not about rhetoric. I have served in the Iowa Senate over the last 12 years. I've led on numerous conservative victories and numerous policies. Working with Governor Reynolds, I passed the largest income tax reduction bill ever in state history. I've also passed and wrote property tax limitation bill, both in 2013 and in 2019. I delivered on the pro-life movement. I wrote the Life at Conception bill. We also passed banning all taxpayer-funded abortion and making sure Planned Parenthood no longer receives money from our government. I'm also sponsored and endorsed by the National Right to Life. I am a champion of the Second Amendment rights. I stand firm that we must ban and not have any red flag laws. I've supported and expanded the largest gun rights in Iowa history. I have a lifelong A rating from the NRA. Finally, I've delivered on protecting the right against illegal immigrants, supporting Iowa's ban on sanctuary cities. These aren't campaign promises or rhetoric. These are real results that I've delivered in Iowa. In Congress, I'll continue to do the same. I'll work with President Trump. We'll build the wall, secure the border. We will defund Planned Parenthood across our country. I'll defend Trump's tax cuts. I'll be unwavering in my defense of the Second Amendment and fight against all red flag laws and our God-given rights. Our district, President Trump, deserve effective leaders in Congress. Thank you for your time this evening. I will be honored to have your vote.
Next up, Jeremy Taylor.
Well, good evening. I'm appreciative of the opportunity to be here. We have very critical threats that we're facing as a nation tonight. We have a coronavirus from China endangering the health of the American people and endangering our economy with high unemployment, which has been tough on ag and our small businesses. We have an unsecured border with Mexico, and we have the threats of the Middle East, for which our Iowa National Guard is increasingly deploying. But we also have an ever-looming crisis from within. We face a moral and spiritual crisis of who we are as a people and what we'll be. Will we be a nation that gives our children a fiscal inheritance, or a $25 trillion national debt? A nation of secure borders, or one that disregards the rule of law? A nation that values all life, or lives with the legacy of over 60 million unborn that have been lost since Roe v. Wade? Will we be a nation of limitless opportunity, or will we be one that the socialist left increasingly takes over in terms of power? We have to take back the U.S. House from the likes of Nancy Pelosi, but to do so we must hold the 4th District seat, which was almost lost to liberal J.D. Scholten, and that was before losing committee assignments and a partnership with President Trump. Conservatives asked me to run in this race because they didn't want an establishment candidate, they wanted a constitutionalist. I'm a constitutionalist who in the Iowa House floor managed several important pieces of legislation into law, earning an A ranking from the American Conservative Union and the NRA with a 100% pro-life voting record. Turned around the largest county in Iowa's 4th District for record lower taxation. I met my wife while teaching on a Christian mission in Vietnam, and we count as blessings our 4 girls and 2 boys. And after having grown up under socialism, Kim legally immigrated here, and as small business owners, we're living the American dream. I'm now an Army chaplain and major in the Iowa Army National Guard who brings soldiers to God and God to soldiers. And I believe I'm called to stand in the gap, to serve for such a time as this, to fight for you and your family, to fight for freedom, and to fight for the 4th District. Thank you.
Thank you. Bret Richards.
Well, thank you, everyone, and thank you for hosting. I want to start by asking you a question. Who solves more problems, you and your neighbors or politicians? I bet I could sit down with any one of my neighbors and solve more problems in 20 minutes than politicians have solved in 20 years. When a politician tells you something, have you ever thought, what is he really saying? I wrote an amendment and stood up for you What they really mean is nothing's going to happen, so I made a big show of it to make you think I tried. Or my favorite, I gave you a tax break. What I hear is they're running for office again. It's time we change Washington before it changes us. In our communities, we take charge, we solve problems, and we create opportunities. In the past 16 months, traveling over 70,000 miles to 250 campaign events, including the greatest county fair right here in Spencer, I've met a lot of people I respect and trust. They tell me that I remind them of someone they know. I was born in Harlan and raised in Irwin, where I worked hard walking beams, changing tires in my parents' service station. I graduated college and married my high school sweetheart, Jill. And afterwards, I was commissioned in the Army as a combat engineer officer. After my time as a soldier overseas, we came back to Irwin to grow our family business and to raise our family in a way that we were raised with the same great Iowa values. Iowa is a great place to raise a family. But right now, I see opportunity and our values just slipping away. The survival of our way of life is too important to trust to just another politician. Instead, let's send Congress an Iowa neighbor to get the job done.
Thank you. And finally, with our opening remarks, Congressman Steve King.
Thank you, Randy. It takes a little work to put this all together, and I'm sitting here listening to this. I'm kind of glad I got to be the last one to give the opening statement here, because I reflect upon all my opponents here. They're here because they believe the New York Times. They can't have anything else going on, or they wouldn't be here. They would have defended me instead. But instead, they believe the New York Times, and they want you to believe the New York Times. But I've been all over this district. I've been to all 382 towns in this district over the past several years. I run into a credible Republican that came up and said, you know what, the New York Times is right. They don't believe that here. We polled that all across this district, and the only poll that's been released in this campaign. And what we got back was 75% of the people say Steve King's right. 15% said I believe the New York Times. When we checked the crosstabs on that, it said those 15% came out of somebody that signed up to support one of these guys. So they were just protecting their investment. No legitimate person believes the New York Times. That is why we have this primary right now. It's because the New York Times has thrown the wrench into the works, and political opportunists have decided that they want to jump into this thing hoping that I am wounded. But you know, the truth shall set you free. And if you don't think so, take a look at General Michael Flynn. Michael Flynn went through a terrible, terrible ordeal for 3 years or more. He lost his home, $6 million, but you know, the truth came out. The truth came out on me too. It just hasn't been exonerated yet. My time will come around. And you all need to know this. You're running on the New York Times, and you're running on no committee assignments. Can anybody stand up and say it's what I said or did that caused that to happen? That's not on me. That's on the people that made that decision and the ones that need to rectify it. And you all should have stood up to defend me on that, and you were nowhere to be found. But I stood up for every principle of this Republican platform. Everything that's from renewable fuels to the Second Amendment, to repealing Obamacare, to the immigration border security issue, to the life issue. And I've led on the heartbeat bill. And you know, the people that endorse you, Randy, their national right to life, they're the ones that killed my heartbeat bill in Washington. That's why they're supporting you and why they're attacking me, because I exposed them. There's more, but I'm going to conclude with that and move on to questions.
Thank you very much to all of our candidates this evening. We're going to take our first question.
I think the most pressing thing on everybody's mind is probably COVID-19 at this particular moment, so we'll address that in our first question. In the wake of this crisis, what can the federal government do to spur economic recovery and to be better prepared for an emergency in the future?
Randy Feenstra, you have the first answer.
Thanks for the question. People are hurting in the 4th District and around Iowa because of this coronavirus. Just last week, I had one of my close family friends who has a business say, I don't think I can open again. I don't have the money. We sat down, we worked through an SBA loan, and I can only hope that he opens again. I helped another family friend with unemployment benefit papers. It's a hard time, but I stand with Trump. We have to have our government help make a difference and help people in this short time that we have this coronavirus. I see it with our farmers right now, what coronavirus has done. It just has devastated our producers. They don't know what to do, how to euthanize hogs, as we have to kill approximately 400,000 every week because our packers are only taking in 80% of what they should. This is hard times, and this is where government has to stand together. And I applaud Governor Reynolds. I applaud President Trump for creating a balance of economy and protecting society. And we can do more, and we will do more to get people uplifted and to help businesses and to help family farms so they can succeed, so they don't go bankrupt, and to help those that are unemployed so they can have a job as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next answer will come from, Jeremy Taylor.
Is this in response
Yes.
to the same question? Thank you very much. So I believe that we need to get this economy reopened. We have to do so safely and judiciously, and taking proper steps in order to maintain social distancing and all of the recommendations that are coming out. At the same time, there's a certain role of what the federal government should not do, and that's multi-trillion-dollar bailouts, especially states like California and New York and Illinois. Doing so will only endanger a nation that was already $23 trillion in debt. I am in favor of targeted spending for small business loans, for unemployment expansion, and for individuals. What I'm not for is the pet projects of the socialist left, and you saw the very first instincts from the U.S. House under the leadership, or so-called leadership, of Nancy Pelosi. So we need to have direct help for those individuals who have fallen on hard times through no fault of their own. We need to make sure that it's targeted and it's toward individuals, but we also have to start getting this economy reopened and back on its feet. And we also have to preserve our liberties and freedoms at this time as we safely and judiciously reopen our economy, lest those liberties that we prize be trampled upon. Thank you.
Thank you. Next answer will come from Bret Richards.
Well, thank you for the question. I know it's on everyone's mind. I do want to say something, though. Congressman King, I don't believe the New York Times. I just think our republic's made better when we exercise our right to our representation and have people run against each other. I think I've been sharpened. I think maybe I've sharpened Congressman King and Jeremy Taylor and Steve Reeder by this. So it's not necessarily a question about believing the New York Times. It's just a matter of the fact that we live in a republic and our voters have choices. On the issue of COVID-19 and the economy, look, I was a small business owner. My family's been in business since 1977. And we've been through some rough times, never like this though. You know, we're actually at a stage where we could enter into a Great Depression again. What we've got to do is get things opened up. Let's be smart about it. Let's make sure those elderly and the people that have underlying conditions are protected. But we cannot let our small businesses become idle, while our large businesses, which have been given so many regulatory protections over the last few decades, get every single advantage and remain open. Right now, small business owners that I talk to, they're not worried about when they can reopen. They're worried that they're going to lose their customers for good because they've already had the habit of going to large corporations. So we've got to get people going back to the small businesses. In fact, 60% of our economy comes from small businesses. Those are people less than 300 now, or we should actually have a better classification on what a real small business is. We've got to have small businesses under 50 so we can protect them. And let's not give bailouts to Southwest Airlines or the cruise lines. Why not make sure we protect the small businesses? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Up next, Congressman Steve King.
Well, thank you. And first I'd say that we went a little too far when we launched into this, but we didn't have enough facts to work with either. And we had some charts that were put up every day at the press conference that didn't hold up very well. We're getting more and more information right now, but I would say there's a number of things we can do for recovery. And one of them is a payroll tax relief. That helps the employer and the employee, and it's something that gets the people back to work again. We've got up to 40 million Americans unemployed. What a stunning thing to hit us. That's more people unemployed than ever in the history of this country. And some of them are going to go back to places where there aren't jobs. There's another piece that can be very, very helpful, and I presented this to the White House and to Governor Reynolds, and that's this. To gather up and collect the demographics of those who have tested positive. We need to have all of that data so that if you tested positive, say you're 50 years old and male, 5'10", 180 pounds, and no pre-existing conditions, but you test positive, then you need to know if you're asymptomatic, or if you recovered at home, or if you went to the hospital, the ICU, intubation, or from there, either home recovered or to the cemetery. What is a similarly situated person? How are they dealt with demographically? We could put millions of people in this database so that you can go on that on a website, CDC for example, type in your birthday, age, height, sex, pre-existing conditions, and know your risk. That way, if you're 19 years old and you've got a less than 1/10% chance of being a fatal experience with this, you can go back to work. Don't go see grandpa who may not have a half a chance to survive this. But that way each one of us can make our own decisions along those lines, and that would let us flow back into life. Life is a risk. Sometimes we roll through stop signs, sometimes we drive a little bit fast, but those are calculated risks. And we can calculate the risks if we know the data. And so that's just some of the things that we can do, but we've got to get back in this economy. We pulled it the other night, and only 27% of the people were taking advantage of the opening up of the businesses that came from the governor, which I believe was right. And 77 counties opened up to a degree, 38 of 39 in the 4th District. We've been tracking also the net active cases, and that just got dropped off the governor's website in the last few days, but we really need to know net active cases, and I wanted 0 in every single county eventually and soon.
Thank you very much. Final comment from Stephen Reeder.
Thank you for that question, Dana. And the people throughout the country are hurting, both those that have had sick ones that they have lost and our small businesses. President Trump did an awesome job of handling the crisis from the beginning. And the most important thing I liked about what he did was delegating his authority to the governors. That's what our country was formed upon. It wasn't for the federal government to run our lives. It was to let the states and the people run our lives. I don't want our freedoms being infringed upon. I'm a strict constitutionalist, and I want our businesses open, and I want to make sure that we isolate persons with compromised immune systems, that the elderly and the sick, and make sure that they are quarantined, and we got to get our businesses back to work. President Trump, who's a businessman like I am, he understands this, and that's why he's championing getting the businesses back to work. We saw over the last several administrations, I'm talking Obama, I'm talking Bush and Clinton, selling out our government and our country to China. This originated in China, and we have to be careful. They are a communist nation. We are a freedom, a country of liberty and freedoms, and we have to protect that. And right now, we have to get our people back to work. And the Iowans, the hardworking people of Iowa, want to do that.
Thank you very much. Would anybody care for a 30-second addition? Okay. All right, so Bret Richards will give the first 30-second comment.
Thanks. I don't want our federal government to track more data, whether I have a disease or not. I'd rather have that be in the hands of our hospitals. I'm the board chair of a healthcare center. We aggregate things like that already, so let's keep our privacy intact on that. I do want to say that one thing our legislature needs to do as soon as they get back in session is they need to address the overreach that's written into the emergency declaration. 29C has a lot of areas where a non-benevolent governor can actually take advantage and take our rights away from us.
Thank you. Congressman King.
Well, first, I'm glad that I've got one that doesn't believe the New York Times, and I agree with much of what Bret said about that. And the second is on this data, we're not looking for names or addresses or any identifying characteristics. We're looking for the information that will save lives. And third, we need to support an indemnity plan for the pork producers that have to euthanize their hogs. It's going to be awful. It's going to be a minimum of $3 million. It's going to go to $7 million, maybe even $10 million. And it's just too hard to hit. We can't subsidize foreign ownership of hogs. It's going to be awfully hard to think about doing it for packer ownership. But our individual producers, we've got to be there for them. This was shut down by government. We've got to have their back. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else care to weigh in on the 30 seconds for this question? Okay, yes. Right ahead, Jeremy Taylor.
One of the things that I want to make clear is that the Defense Production Act that President Trump supported, I think, is critical in order to make sure that our producers are continuing to be able to have their livelihoods. The other thing that I think is very important is that we understand under the system of federalism that the federal government doesn't get to dictate from on high, that each local governor, municipality is able to maximize his or her own freedoms and the people to which he or she is charged. I think that's critically important. We also have to look at small businesses and their ability to have tax deferred plans so that they can have systems of savings, as well as in our ag community for such a time as this, for rainy day funds that would not otherwise be taxed. So we need to learn the lessons of this so that history doesn't repeat itself and that our businesses are prepared in the future as we reopen our economy once again.
Thank you very much. Randy Feenstra?
As I said earlier, our producers are struggling right now. Our family farms are going to go bankrupt if government does not get involved. We have to have a plan of indemnity for our producers. They're going to be euthanizing over 400,000 hogs a week or more. We must have a plan. I'm so supportive of Senator Grassley that finally said yesterday, hey, we need a Senate plan on how to euthanize these animals and how to pay for that. I also agree that we need to, I'm glad that Trump stepped in on the Defense Production Act, that we can get our packers open, that we can make sure that our meat can finally get processed. All these things need to happen. Our producers are struggling right now. We have to do everything possible to help them.
Steve's waving me off. He's going to pass on this. Okay, thank you.
Well, I'm supportive of our president and the measures that he took, and what we're doing is learning sometimes as we go along. So this is one of those challenges as a military officer that's often faced in the so-called fog of war. I believe that as we learn more about this virus and its origination in China, I believe that we have reacted in a way that has been measured and responsive in Iowa and certainly in South Dakota. But what I would say is there has been overreach, there has been overreaction, and there's been a trampling of our religious liberties and our freedoms in such a way that I don't think is appropriate. Look at Governor Whitmer over in Michigan. I don't believe that we should ever have a situation where our churches are being closed. I do think that we ought to have a system where it's voluntary and where we have personal liberty and freedom. We take recommendations, and it's a system, as I mentioned earlier, under federalism where local control is what helps to govern the day. So I'm appreciative that under President Trump, our federal government has not overreached, but I do believe that there's instances where there's overreaction and been a loss of liberty that's very disconcerting. We need to make sure that we're getting our economy back on its feet, not only for the health and livelihood of the American people and the nearly 40 million who are unemployed, but also so that people have their freedoms and their liberties that I've fought for and that I want to preserve and protect. Thank you.
Bret Richards.
Well, I do think President Trump and Governor Reynolds have done a good job, and I think hindsight's always 20/20. So there will be a time where we go back and learn lessons from this. I think that one of the things that we should learn from it is our dependence on China. Our trade dependence on them for everything from antibiotics to protective equipment. And China is not some great country that's a great trade partner for us. They're always looking out for their self-interest. So we've got to react to things like that and learn those lessons also. I'm very proud, like I mentioned earlier, I'm very proud to sit on the board of a healthcare center, and initially it was pretty scary when we started thinking about how many lives were being lost in Italy. If the mortality rate in Italy would have been indicative of what it would be here, probably those things weren't an overreach. However, looking back, mortality rate is not that high here in the United States and probably not in Italy. So good planning now, learning those lessons is what we need to continue doing in the future.
Thank you very much. Congressman Steve King.
Well, as I said, I think we overreacted to a degree here in the United States, and we won't know how much until we look back on this and get the demographics and the data and really go back and analyze that. But I don't think we ever should have closed the churches in this country. Could have given us some guidelines, and then we take our risks on that. That's a constitutional principle that I think I hit really hard. And I didn't make an issue out of it at the time because I didn't have the scope of this quite understood either, but now that I do and I look at that. So we've gone a little far on the domestic side of this, a little too far, and we've pushed the businesses down and kept them closed probably longer than they needed to be. But we've underreacted with regard to how we deal with China. I mean, China quarantined their medical supplies and their PPEs, and they quarantined the Chinese in the Wuhan province area, but they let the Chinese fly all over the world and carry the disease to the world. So when President Trump reacted against the World Health Organization, that was not an overreaction, that was the right kind of reaction to go back against China. I spent 3 days down at Mar-a-Lago not that long ago. I had the dots in my I'll say my knowledge base of the existential threat that is China and the asymmetrical warfare that they are. But when I came back from down there, those dots were connected. And I was very concerned. This is before this virus hit us. It was actually right before Christmas. And so now I see this strategy of China and how they have damaged the economy and all the rest of the world and pretty much protected their own. And when you quarantine medical equipment, tie up PPEs in China, and send your people out to the rest of the world and quarantine them within the Wuhan province area, that pretty well sends a signal. Now, I can't tell how much of this is strategized, or how much of it's incompetence, or how much of it is just apathy. But China needs to pay a price for this. There must be a reckoning. And that means bring the industry back to the United States, starting with the medical supplies and the equipment. Let's get a U.S. manufacturing back here again. Let's make Made in America actually be our practice and our function. And if we don't do that, we're vulnerable to the Chinese again.
Thank you very much. Stephen Reeder.
Thank you for that question, Russ. And as far as overreaction, I think there was an overreaction by two different entities. One, the media, and we can't trust the media. As Steve King knows, we can't trust the media. They will spread lies and rumors for a number of reasons. They will spread them to take down our president, and they'll spread them to take down conservative Republicans. And what we have to do is we have to sort through all the BS and look for the truth. And if we look at the numbers are not coming in as serious as as the media was projecting once they wanted to stoke fear into our economy. The other thing that I want to express is the overreaction of some entities, some governors, wanting to take a power grab over our people. And that is seen, as Jeremy mentioned, in the state of Michigan and the state of California. We have these Democratic governors that want power. And the way they can exercise power is by exercising fear and trying to gain power over people by wanting to spread rumors that we have to vaccinate, we have to track, and I am a freedom-loving individual that will protect our U.S. Constitution to the very end. And we have to make sure that our freedoms are protected. When I go to Washington, I will stand by that Constitution and make sure that our freedoms and our liberties are not infringed upon.
Thank you. Senator Randy Feenstra.
Thank you. This is a great question. The reaction was all predicated on what China was telling us. And this is shameful. And we have to go after China. This is what caused everything to happen because they did not tell us the truth. And what happened? The WHO, the World Health Organization, did the same thing. They covered it up. So what did we have to do? The United States and President Trump had to react. I applaud President Trump. What he did, he quickly banned travel from China. He also made sure that we're fast-tracking vaccines so we can open up as soon as possible. He implemented the Defense of the Production Act so we can make sure we keep our packers open. It's also noted that we're looking at the Prime Act to make sure that we have mom and pop meat processors that can get open and put their product into grocery stores. These are all things that happen. I look at President Trump and I look at Governor Reynolds, and they're in a tough situation. But they did a great job of balancing our economy with the health of our nation. And kudos to President Trump, who left it up to each state to decide when to open and how to close. And I think Governor Reynolds did a great job. And there's other states that should be ashamed of what they're doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anybody care for a 30-second additional time here? Congressman King?
I'm happy to hear that Randy supported the Prime Act. That's a bill that I've been on for a number of cycles now, working with Thomas Massey in Kentucky, and also working with our Secretary of Agriculture, Mike Nagg, to get a memorandum of understanding in so that our local locker plants can meet federal USDA standards but be inspected by state inspectors so they can get the USDA stamp on that meat. Then they can sell to the chains in this state, and they can sell in interstate commerce. We also have hogs, heavy hogs that are going back east. They'll haul isoweens in, heavy hogs back east. We're spreading these markets out and getting some things done on that. But I was at this early step that says this: we need to have boutique meat operations all over this country that can grow out of this. Just like we had the microbrewery startup about 25 years ago, we can have little packing plants all over this country, and we're laying the foundation to do it now.
Bret Richards?
You know, one of the things I get frustrated hearing is that we can fix the problem that we created. In 1906, 1957, 67, and 89, the Federal Meat Inspection Act was passed. Well, guess what? That's what created these large packers right now. So now we got to go back and fix it with the Prime Act. I'm glad that we're talking about that, but we should have never lost the small lockers, the small packers that were in our cities, in our countrysides that we have now. So let's get government out of the way and let Iowans take care of themselves. We can inspect our own food and make sure it's right.
Anybody else care for Stephen Reed?
While we're talking about food supply and COVID, I want to also add that we have Congress and the White House over the past several decades has allowed this consolidation. We have antitrust laws on the books that can be enforced. And we allow this consolidation to happen and pushed our small businesses in Iowa to the side. And it's hurt our agriculture and it's hurt our main street of Iowa. We have to support the Prime Act that Steve King and Tom Massey have been behind. And that will allow small businesses like that I've visited across the 39 counties, like Newton, Amanda, that have Grandview Beef down in Clarion, and Chris Kraft, who has the Ruthven Locker up in Spirit Lake and Ruthven. These people are hardworking people. We have to get more farm-to-table businesses going. And that's why I'm supporting all the farmers markets across the district. So we have more fresh produce, and we need to get the power out of these big 4 or 5 big processors and get them to the people of Iowa that are producing the food that we can get farm to table.
Jeremy Taylor.
Well, I too just want to make it noted that I'm supportive of President Trump, and I'm so glad that he, along with Vice President Pence, listened to Senators Grassley and Ernst and others that were making the case, especially as shelf prices are high and our producers are being paid what amounts to a pittance in comparison. So I think that looking at our packers and investigating into the DOJ, I think is appropriate, and I applaud President Trump. I'm very appreciative of his leadership as Commander-in-Chief. Appreciative Randy brought him up. I think he called him a novelty act at one point, but I think he's showing the kind of leadership that our Commander-in-Chief ought to, and somebody that I applaud for his leadership during this time.
Anyone else, or we'll move on to the next question, which will...
Looking at it right now, what is your opinion on how Governor Reynolds is handling the current COVID-19 situation in Iowa, and are there any things you would have done differently?
Okay, I think Bret Richards actually has this one first. Yeah.
I was eager.
Well, we've talked a lot about this already, and I think one of the things that's important to note is that the governor has good intentions. I think she's making tough decisions. I think President Trump's done a good job, and we've already had several names been floated about of governors that are not doing good things. What you have to know is, look, we need someone to have put leadership forward. I was the first one, I think, of all the people on this esteemed panel here to actually call out in an article in the Iowa Standard in April 15th that there are overreaches in our code. We gave up our churches because of this. We probably would have willingly done it. If someone said, the pandemic is this bad, don't go to church, look, we could have done it over YouTube like we did, or over the internet. That's great. But when someone orders you not to do something that's guaranteed in our Bill of Rights, there's a problem. And right now that piece of code is still there in the Iowa Code. It needs to be changed, and a co-equal branch needs to be back in session and actually doing their job and changing the code so governors of the future, like I said, Governor Reynolds might be a benevolent governor right now, but in the future, are we going to have one that won't be? We cannot give up those rights. In the code, it actually says you can have forced vaccinations. When there's a time when everybody's in a panic, what happens if a vaccination is rushed and a governor said, you will vaccinate your kid and your grandma and you will take the vaccine too? We have choices. Informed consent is an important part of our rights as citizens. We cannot let this error be left in the code. Thank you.
Congressman Steve King.
The question was, what kind of job is the governor doing?
Yes, in the COVID situation.
Yes, and I want to make sure I was answering the question. I'll say first, I think she's doing a good job. I mentioned that before. It's important that your top executive officer act with confidence and boldly and decisively and exude that confidence. And she does do that. She has been doing that. It reminds me of the day when she signed my heartbeat bill. I called her 20 minutes before the bill signing ceremony, and I said, you got to own this. When you go out there happy, go out there confident, own it. And if there's any voice inflection that quavers a little bit or shows any indecision, or the press will grab that thing and they will drive it home all the way. You got to own it, you got to live it. And she did that. She got an A+ at that press conference in the bill signing of the heartbeat bill. And she gets a high grade from the people I ask in our teletown hall meetings on what kind of job she's doing here with COVID. In fact, those numbers are asked the number on is she doing an excellent job, an adequate job, or an insufficient job? We ask that question, and the insufficient numbers in those polls come around maybe 12-13%. And so that tells you what kind of job she is doing, I believe, as far as confidence is concerned in this. But some other things I think about is, remember the governor of Louisiana when they had Katrina, and all the indecision down there and the chaos that came out of that indecision. So it's important that we have decisive decisions made, but also some of the things that we need more of are the demographics that I talked about. We've been struggling to pull that out of that Department of Public Health, and there's no reason why we Iowans can't know the net number of active cases in the counties. And, you know, we look around, we aren't even finding out the towns that they're in, they're just a county. And so when you have a case, say you have Crawford County for a while, they had 1 fatality and 6 positive cases. And as you watched them, it drifted down to, it got to nearly 0 active cases. You look along the southern 2 tiers of counties, nearly 0 active cases down there. Now it changes, and it pops up and down. But our goal needs to be to get that information and watch it. And I don't know why that they're not there, but I'm calling for that data tonight. Give it to me county by county, the number of active cases. Thanks.
Thank you, Congressman. Stephen Reeder.
Thank you for that question, Matt. And the answer that I believe is that Governor Reynolds is doing a good job. And the thing that I like to see was her teaming with our president, and that both of them are showing confidence and they're explaining to people what we can do and what we can't do. But I want to back up and say, quote one of my favorite presidents, Reagan, when he said, "Government is not the solution to the problem. Government is the problem." And what I mean by that is that I don't want to rely on the government for anything. The Iowans are hardworking people, and they're smart and they can make decisions for themselves. We have to make sure that the government just leads from a position of guidance, and they have to make sure that they defend our country. And I'm all for the individual making their own decisions, because they have the right to do so. I'm all about freedom and getting government out of the way.
Thank you. Senator Randy Feenstra.
Thank you. I came into the Iowa Senate with Governor Reynolds. We served together in the Iowa Senate. And back when we were serving together 10 years ago, I knew that she was going to be a rock star. I knew right then that she was going to be a leader. And over the years, I've had more and more respect for her. Me and her have worked very hard to pass the largest income tax reduction in state history. We worked together on passing voter ID. We passed together the largest expansion of Second Amendment rights and the freedom of speech on college campuses. And now she had to handle the COVID virus. And she did it like she always has done. She worked across the aisle. She worked with the Department of Workforce Development, the Department of Health. She worked with the Small Business Administration. She worked with the Secretary of Agriculture. She called us legislators regularly and said, "How can we do this? What do we need to do?" She took a fair and balanced approach of balancing the health of our individual Iowans and how our economy could be hurt. To me, in my book, she's a rock star. She's done a great job, and I look forward to serving with her as I finish my term in the Iowa Senate.
Thank you very much. Jeremy Taylor.
Thank you. I believe Governor Reynolds has done a good job, and I applaud her measures. And I applaud her stopping short of stay-at-home orders and having the adaptability of looking at each county on a case-by-case basis. Obviously, Brooklyn, Iowa is different from Brooklyn, New York, and so having the adaptability to open up in a measured way is important. I've made it known that I disagree with the closure of churches as a U.S. Army chaplain who values the First Amendment, but I'm not here to play armchair quarterback. She's doing a better job than most governors. I'm running for Congress. And with that, I want to reserve my criticisms for the U.S. House of Representatives under the so-called leadership of Nancy Pelosi. Look at the instincts of the socialist left. Time and time again, they use crisis. And how do they use crisis? In order to foist a socialist agenda. So look at the funding for the Kennedy Center when our pork producers don't have the indemnity yet. Look at the funding for elements of the Green New Deal and those instincts that would radically alter our way of life in terms of farming and agriculture here in Iowa. And look at the abortion providers and pro-choice policies that were initially put into a multi-trillion-dollar package that we can ill afford. It is time to take back the United States House of Representatives. I don't believe the New York Times. I'm not in this for selfish ambition or selfish gain. I'm in this to help to restore to our historic rights and values that which we hold dearly and that which we prize in our Constitution, so that our children and our children's children recognize the country that we seek to leave to them. Thank you.
Anybody care for a 30-second? Richard, you bet. Come on.
You know, I think Congressman King and I are having a good discussion about how we can learn a lesson about public health and what we actually track. And I just want to make sure, Congressman, that when we go forward and try to find out who's sick, that we don't end up tracking someone, let's say they're from Chiron, they're 70-year-old, they have an underlying condition, and maybe this condition in that way, and then everybody knows who's got COVID-19. So I guess my point is, we don't want to have data out there that give away our HIPAA rights. And so I just want to make sure that when we have those discussions that we keep those privacies that are important to us.
Thank you. Congressman King.
I didn't really have anything, but now I do. No, I want to make this clear that we have a HIPAA law, and we don't need to have a hyper-HIPAA reaction to this. But I'm talking about data that either is collected now or should be collected. And the form that I put together that's available to the White House and to the governor's office is a form that we went to all 50 states in the union, and we gathered what they were collecting on their websites, and then we put the form together. What we're asking for is nothing more than what is available in at least some of the states. And it isn't names, it isn't addresses, it isn't identifying characteristics. What it really is the data that's necessary for us to learn so that we can protect people.
Thank you very much. Anyone else here for comment here? Okay, we're going to move on to thousands of dollars from PACs and super PACs. And this will start with Congressman Steve King.
Well, first, a lot of that's independent expenditures. And so the big money actually comes as independent expenditures, but you have your opportunity to turn them down. And when you look and see what PACs are supporting individual candidates, the ideology of those PACs generally reflect the ideology of the candidates. And I've been watching this a little bit here, and you know the support that I've had. I mean, the last time we really went out for endorsements, that was when Christy Vilsack was my opponent, and we had 60 agriculture organizations that endorsed me, and she got the goose egg lobby. So that was pretty good for ag support. If you look at what's going on now, this Republican Main Street Partnership PAC, I walk by them on Wednesday mornings in the Capitol Hill Club, where I chair the Conservative Opportunity Society and have for 16 years. I'm one of the few Republicans with a gavel in Congress. When you walk by, you take a right turn, you go into Conservative Opportunity, you take a left turn, and you go into the Republican Rhino PAC. And these are the people that are supporting Randy Feenstra. They are known as a Rhino PAC. You don't bother to say the Republican Main Street Partnership. They are the people that killed the repeal, the full 100% rip it out by the roots repeal of Obamacare. They're the people that are advocating for red flag laws, which is why you heard him say he's opposed to red flag, because he's endorsed by a PAC that is supporting red flag laws. And another one would be National Right to Life. When you look at them, we had to fight them. They battled against the heartbeat bill, not only in Washington, but in the states around the union. And they say that they're a pro-life organization. They're not. They are incrementalists, and they're in the business to perpetuate their job. So you can go on with that. For example, the PACs that have the money pouring in do reflect those wishes. One of them was Karl Rove's PAC that came in a while ago. And Karl Rove holds a grudge against me because I killed amnesty every time he tried to bring it. Now he's working against me because he thinks if Steve King had been out of the way, we'd had amnesty a long time ago. You can trace this all back, look at the PACs, follow the money, and you'll find out the ideology, and the candidate reflects the ideology.
Thank you. Stephen Reeder.
Thank you for that question, Randy. And when I set out to run for Congress, I want to represent the people of Iowa, the Main Street of Iowa, all the hard-working people that own the businesses, that run the farms, the ranches. And I will not, when I get to Washington, I will not be beholden to anyone. just like President Trump, I've been in business for 35 years, and I know how business works. I've dealt with all types of businesses, large and small, and I have not accepted any money from any PACs, and I have no intention to. When Brenda and I went across the district, when we were getting our nomination petition, we talked to thousands of people. And the people that we spoke to, one of the most frustrating things that we heard from people was they felt a disconnect between Washington and the people of Iowa. And as far as I'm concerned, what I was hearing was that these special interest groups and these lobbyists and the PACs, they own some of these congresspeople. They're indebted to them when they start financing their campaigns, and who knows what goes on once they get to Washington. But I will be representing, I have a reputation of honesty and integrity from 35 years of business. I will take that to Washington and make sure that the people of Iowa are represented, not some special interest group, not a PAC. I will not be beholden to anyone, just like President Trump. That is why he's been successful, and I'm going to mirror what he's doing in Iowa and stand behind him. I will also align myself with the Freedom Caucus. I spoke to one of the congressmen from the Freedom Caucus this afternoon, and those are the people I align with. They are patriots for our country.
Senator Randy Feenstra.
Just a week ago, I had an 85-year-old lady come to my door with a $5 bill. And she said, "Randy, please protect Social Security. I live on it. It's my monthly income." A couple days ago, I got a check from a farmer in Hardin County. Said, "Here's $75, Randy. Please help us. We no longer have a seat on the Agriculture Committee. We need somebody. We need a voice." I have received over 1,900 contributions, from $5 to the max of $5,000. Of these 1,900 contributions, 80% of them came from Iowans. 1,100 of these contributions came from the 4th District. If you look at who I am and who's supporting me, I am a principled, constitutional conservative that has a proven record of getting things done. I am supported by Governor Branstad, Bob Vanderplatz, representative of this area, Megan Jones. I am endorsed by organizations like the Republican Jewish Coalition, the National Right to Life, which I am proud of, and many others, the Biorenewables PAC. It's interesting, as Congressman King talked about a PAC called Main Street. They came to me because they were excited about what we did to help Main Street for deregulation, to lower taxes. And this same PAC also gave money to Senator Grassley, Senator Ernst, and Congressman Tom Latham. I am proud of our campaign and how we've reached across all different areas, different spectrums of business, farming, families, individuals, because they realize we need a fresh face in Congress.
Much. Jeremy Taylor.
What a great question. And I believe this issue is critical, and I believe I have very little daylight between Congressman King and myself on this issue, because follow the money, as Sam Clovis would say. The only PAC that's contributed to me is Siouxland Ethanol, because they know I'll stand for the RFS. And you look at my money, and you'll see that it comes from the co-chair of the Iowa Trump campaign. It comes from the lead counsel of the Iowa Heartbeat Bill as far as endorsements. I would say to Randy respectfully, we were born at night, some of us, but not last night. And so if you follow the money, you'll know exactly the supporters that Randy Feenstra has are many of them never Trump folks. So when Randy Feenstra called President Trump a bit of a novelty act, some of his top supporters called President Trump treasonous. We need to make sure that if you follow the money and you actually see, this is a danger. Senator Feenstra, as Ways and Means Chair, after promising conservatives that he would not expand sports gambling, was the single most important person to the sports gambling lead lobbyists. That lead lobbyist set up a PAC for him later on, after he shepherded that to the House or the Senate floor and then voted against it so he could tell people back home that that was his principled stand. If you follow the money, you'll see that there's a danger. There's a difference in this race. If you believe that it's time to move on from Congressman King, respectfully, you will have me a constitutionalist who's beholden to no one else than the 4th District constituents, not to PACs that support red flag legislation, and not to moderates of our party, and not to those who are the never Trump wing of the Republican Party. Thank you.
Doug Richards.
There is way too much money in politics. My campaign, though, is an example of how you can do it right. What I've done is my team and I went out and we hit 30 county fairs. We went to the state fair. I don't even know how many parades we did. I've been interviewed in every single county, in every newspaper that'll talk to me. When I go show up there, I'll sit down and talk to them. I'm not afraid to answer any question put to me. And look at that. I did it without taking any super PAC monies or having any big endorsements. All you have to do, and what I once won, is to meet their representative face to face, to actually know where they stand on issues. I didn't waste my time calling people for fundraising when I'd rather be out talking to Iowans, and that's what they want. I think that we've got to look at how we do it. Honestly, I don't know how you get the money out, because it does allow the playing field to be level. So someone can come in and run against an incumbent or someone else. But what we have today does not work. And that's what every American knows. That when you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and someone comes knocking, who are they going to listen to? The person with the $100,000 check or the person in the kitchen table across from them? Thank you.
Anybody care for, I kind of figured we'd get a few people maybe want to take advantage of this. Congressman King, go ahead.
Well, thank you. I think some more things need to be clarified. And one of them is this PAC I call the Rhino PAC. There's not one member of that that's either a member of the Freedom Caucus or a member of the Conservative Opportunity Society. One of them stumbled into my breakfast one morning, looked around and said, "I don't belong here. Stay. We want to talk to you." They wouldn't do it. That's who they are. And Randy, you went to their school. You didn't just have them come to you. You went to their school to learn what they had to say. And then you end up with this endorsement from the people that killed the Obamacare legislation, or the repeal of Obamacare. And then with the U.S. Chamber, they are the amnesty chamber. That's the only thing we disagree on. That's what it's about. It's about promoting amnesty. So we're getting this figured out now. I think everybody doesn't believe the New York Times, except I haven't heard Randy tell us whether he believes the New York Times.
Anybody else care for 30 seconds here? Otherwise, we will move on to the next question. Oh, I'm sorry. Go right ahead, Jeremy Taylor.
Well, I too want to clarify that I'm a lover of the Freedom Caucus and see myself in that ilk. I've been through this district over 17,000 miles at more than 75 events, and I've asked the same question every single time. What happened when Republicans were in control of the House and the Senate and the presidency? And without a doubt, each time there's an answer, and it's not a whole lot. Republicans didn't stand for life, didn't secure the border when they had the chance, couldn't cut $1 billion on $4.5 trillion of spending, and didn't repeal Obamacare. That's why we have to have constitutionalists who don't just campaign as conservatives, but actually go and do what they say and actually follow through. With promises made, you can find in me promises kept. That's a key difference between me and Senator Feenstra in this race.
Anybody else care for the 30-second rebuttal? Not, we will move on.
Thank you for that question, Dana. And I do think that compromise is possible. In my business career, in real estate brokerage and development and construction, I didn't get paid unless I completed a deal. And in order to complete a deal, it requires a lot of negotiation. If you're working with buyers and sellers, lessors or lessees, or you're trying to pull a team together, it requires a lot of negotiation. And that's one skill that I will take to Washington. There is a lot of fighting now between Republicans and Democrats, and there is some ways that we can, I think, that you can go across the aisle and try to work through a problem, and it requires negotiation. And I believe that I would like to get to Washington and work with all the Republicans and Democrats to make bills that work for the people of Iowa.
Senator Randy Feenstra.
It's a great question. First of all, a person has to be principled and convicted of certain things. And that's what I've always shown. The stance on making sure that we're protecting life, protecting precious children, that we're taking a firm stance on our Second Amendment rights of making sure that we have the freedom to bear arms, and then also the freedom of speech. Right? If we follow the amendments and make sure that we're constitutional conservatives, we do a great job. But there are many other things that we can collaborate and work together on. In my 12 years in the Iowa Senate, we did that. We worked together on trying to reduce the cost of pharmaceuticals. And it was great working back and forth with colleagues on both sides of the aisle of trying to figure out how do we reduce the cost of pharmaceuticals. I saw this also with transportation and the ag industry, of trying to figure out what are we going to do, what bridges and what roads are we going to build, and working together. And then also in the ag industry about what do we do right now with the struggles that we have. And we've been talking across the aisle saying, how do we help our producers right now? How can we make them whole? What can we do as Iowans, as the Department of Secretary of Ag, to help those that are struggling? I also saw that with SBA loans when the Workforce Development SBA stood up and we all got together, both Democrat and Republican, and said, how can we help those that are struggling, those that are unemployed, those that have lost their business? That's what it is, working together. But we also have to make sure that we're still very principled. And there's some things that we probably just won't agree on one side or the other.
Thank you very much. Jeremy Taylor.
Well, I agree that you can compromise on legislation, but you can never compromise on principles. When you tell people back home, this is what I'm going to do, here's a stance that I'm going to take, then you follow through with that and you don't switch back and forth for political expediency. I will say this, on the issues of life and our historic rights and values, you will not find compromise in me. I have a proven track record of that. But I also have a track record of bipartisanship when it comes to issues where we can find common ground. And I point to Veteran Affairs. In the Iowa House, I floor managed into law a provision where soldiers who were going on deployment were able to assign their joint custodial time to a family member. And as a chaplain, I was recently talking to a soldier who was going on a deployment, and that soldier's life during this next year is directly affected by that legislation, and I was able to work across the aisle. I'm also looking forward to joining the Biofuels Caucus, for which I know that there are members of both sides of the political parties. And I would also point to the fact that on domestic abuse victims' rights, I championed in Judiciary, a committee that I hope to sit on, for which we need representation. In the Iowa House, I championed a county attorney-led bill for felony strangulation and making that a felony, because that was the #1 predictor of an abusive relationship in which there would eventually be a homicide. When Governor Branstad handed me the pen that day, along with Governor Reynolds, and said, "Thank you for doing this," I handed it to somebody from the other side of the aisle who had worked just a little bit longer on that issue. So I do believe that there's areas for which we can work together, but when it comes to principles, when it comes to life, when it comes to our historic rights and values, you will find somebody in me who is rock solid and principled and doesn't just say it. Thank you.
Bret Richard.
You know, I think the problem really is that we think government's the solution. So what we get is two sides fighting over something, and they think, because you'll hear it in a politician's speech, I can do this for you. Well, look, what we should do is get government out of the way, let me retain the voter, the citizen, retain my own principles. I don't need somebody in Washington, D.C., 2,000 miles away, compromising away my right to own a gun or anything else. What we need to have, as Republicans especially, is trust in the American people. And if we can win the battle in Washington, D.C. or Des Moines if we have better ideas. If we return to conservative principles, what happens is the grassroots, the people in the hospitals, the people in the schools figure out how to make the best solutions. We don't need the federal government to compromise a thing. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Congressman Steve King.
I know President Trump once said that I may be the world's most conservative human being, but that doesn't mean I don't compromise with the left from time to time. But it was Thomas Jefferson that said, in matters of style, go with the flow, but in matters of principle, stand like a rock. And I believe he's right on that. And I've heard some good things out of my opponents here with regard to standing on principle. There are times when there are issues that aren't necessarily principles, and I have served 16 years on the Judiciary Committee, the most polarized committee on the Hill, and 16 years on the Ag Committee, the least polarized committee on the Hill. There's hardly anything we can compromise on the Judiciary Committee, but there's many things we can compromise on. In fact, sometimes we don't compromise, we just come together on good ideas. And I think about one of those, for me, was the Protect Interstate Commerce Act, the PICA Act. And I've had this, I'll say it's a gift of looking over the horizon into things and seeing things coming. One morning I was standing, I told this to the president too, by the way, I was standing in the shower, and I'm thinking, what happens, they lock Iowa ethanol out of California. What happens if I load up a tanker of Iowa ethanol, roll over to the port of entry in California, and they'll say, what do you have on us? I have a load of ethanol. Well, what'd you make it out of? None of your business. Does it meet your specifications? Here's a gallon, go test it out in your lab. They want it to be made out of sugarcane. But they can't tell whether it's sugarcane or whether it's out of corn. And so when that hit me that morning, it was, they're regulating interstate commerce in violation of the Commerce Clause of the Constitution and enumerated power in order to create protectionism so that they can get ethanol out of sugarcane instead of corn. And so that's a constitutional violation. So I wrote a bill to fix that. The chairman of the Ag Committee, Colin Peterson, signed on to it. The governor of Minnesota now, Tim Walz, signed on to it also. Several other Democrats on the way. By the way, those two guys asked me to go up to Minnesota to be the Iowa representative on the hog issue in Worthington just a little over a week ago. That's bipartisanship. Nancy Pelosi was my ace in the hole when J.C. Hermstead needed to have that relief from the FDA. And I wrote the bill, I served it up to Speaker Pelosi, and we got it done the same week. That's bipartisanship for the right cause without sacrificing principle.
Thank you, Congressman. Anybody care for 30 seconds here? Everybody's got through a chance to answer. Otherwise, we will move on to the next question.
It's always an interesting question. It's always an interesting question. I have close friends that I've seen over the years. Senator Brad Zahn that went to convention, and Representative David Young was elected. And to me, it's a great tool that we as Iowans have, that we start with grassroots. And grassroots are the people that go to their local caucus, and then they go to county convention, and then they go to the regional convention, district convention, and then they go to the state. Right? They put in a lot of time, and they follow campaigns, they follow politics, and they know who should be elected. And so I tend to support the current way we do things, that they can decide, because they're probably the most engaged. However, I also don't want to disenfranchise our electorate voters. And if I had to write a bill, it would be to remove that 35% criteria and say, let the top two go on to a runoff election. I think that's a fair way. That way the electorate gets to still decide of who should win that election. But great question.
Thank you. Jeremy Taylor.
My short answer is no. I think that every person who goes to that convention ought to look at each one of us and ask themselves, where is this person coming from? What is the motivation for running? Why are they stepping forward? And I will tell you this, I'm stepping forward because I believe that I'm called to serve. Called to serve as I was as an Army chaplain who raised my right hand to swear an oath to protect and defend our Constitution. Called to serve to stand in the gap for such a time as this against what's happening in the United States Congress right now. And I believe that every convention voter must ask themselves, who will best represent me? Who's looking out for me and my family about the kitchen table issues that we're discussing every night, whether it's a lack of disposable income, saving for retirement or college, or stepping up and starting our own small business? Who is going to stand for life and our Second Amendment, our historic rights and values, our free markets and capitalism? And who is supporting, who is funding each person? And look at our track records and then make a prayerful decision. I trust the voters, and I trust that if this goes to convention, that the voters at that convention will choose rightly. And I look forward to continuing to make the case along the campaign trail and along the way. Thank you.
Thank you. Bret Richards.
Well, I think you had a short question last time, too. I'll tell you what, it doesn't matter because I'm going to win this outright on June 2nd. So we will spare that from history right of what Congressman King went through to get in office. I do think the rule book's important. It's important to Iowans, it's important to Americans. And once the game is set, we follow the rules. Because that's really what makes us equal in the United States. So absolutely, the rule book says they'll go to convention if nobody gets 35% plus one vote, and it'll be decided at convention. But it's been done that way, and that's what we know to be true. So I look forward to making my case from now to June 2nd, and many people have already voted absentee, but there's a lot of people that still haven't and still listening tonight right now. And I would encourage them to go to richardsforcongress.com to see who I am, learn more about me. If they haven't met me at one of the 250 campaign events that we've done, where we've met thousands and thousands of Iowans. But I am looking forward to winning on June 2nd. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Congressman Steve King.
Well, Bret took my answer. And so I'm going to give you a different one, and that is, yes, that's the rules, and that's what we're going to play by. I lived through one of these before, and so, aside from my wedding day and the birth of my first, second, and third born, it was probably the most exhilarating day of my life to go through that special nominating convention down in Denison in 2002. And there are a lot of shenanigans that are played in the convention, and deals that are made. And I'll tell you, you think this primary is a game of King of the Hill. A special nominating convention is absolutely a game of King of the Hill. And so whoever they think is at the top is going to be the target for everybody, and deals get made on the side. It's not the best kind of way to select a nominee, but it's the rules, and I'll play by the rules. But I would recommend this, and I think Brad Zahn will have something to say about this too, but I think that we ought to overhaul this process because it's too fraught for too much gamesmanship. But as far as the delegates are concerned, with regard to your question, Russ, they need to make up their own mind for their own reasons. And I don't think that we should load it up with any kind of guilt on either side or another. They're delegates, they're sovereign, let them make up their own mind.
Thank you very much. Stephen Reeder.
I'm sure that the popular vote will weigh with the delegates, but I think the delegates, like most Iowans, are smart and intelligent, and they'll make a decision based on honesty, integrity, and who best represents the values of Iowa, and who best would be an ally to support President Trump. I want to go to Washington to support our president and to support his agenda. He's doing a good job, and he's working to defend our U.S. Constitution, which I will do. Any decision I make will be based on the Constitution and what the people of Iowa want.
Thank you very much. Anybody else care for an additional 30 seconds? Otherwise,
Absolutely. So as somebody who is bullish on ethanol, I will stand for the renewable fuel standard. We have a US EPA that is subverting the rule of law, and that's what this issue is all about. 4 billion gallons means 4 billion gallons. So whether the US EPA is subverting that with the so-called small refinery exemptions and waivers that are being handed out inappropriately, or whether they're failing to remand the 260 million gallons that the courts ordered them, it's high time that we had somebody who was on the Ag Committee and that we have somebody who has a partnership with President Trump so that when he flies home with Senators Grassley and Ernst, he takes the congressman for the 4th District in order to be bullish on ethanol and to make sure that we stand for ethanol in the 4th District. What's happening right now at the federal level is this. Congress passes roughly about 150 pieces of legislation every year. That hasn't changed. What has changed is that there's now over 60,000 pages on the Federal Register. That's something that President Trump, whom I applaud, has been very bullish about. But you have a US EPA, and these are not elected folks that are bureaucrats that are subverting, and it's hurting our Iowa's ethanol industry, our Iowa corn growers. You'll have somebody in me who fights tooth and nail for ethanol and for the RFS. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bret Richards.
Well, that one almost could be a one-word answer for everybody. Yes, of course. You know, in October, when this really came to head, I was the only one in this race that called for the EPA Administrator Wheeler to be fired. President Trump can fix this problem by firing him in October. Guess what? More than rhetoric, I'm showing leadership. I will go against anyone that doesn't have the best interest of Iowans at heart. Since 1978, my family has been selling gasohol. And gasohol, for those listeners that don't remember, is E10. It was just what we called it in 1978. I misspoke, 78. We were the first ones in Shelby County to sell it. And my entire life, we've had investments in infrastructure for biofuels, whether it be biodiesel or alcohol, to make sure Iowans had additional markets for their products. And right now, with oil markets plummeting and demand dropping for passenger car motor fuels, we have a real dilemma because we've spent 40, almost 50 years investing in infrastructure for ethanol. What are we going to do? Well, we've got to get the economy going. We've got to keep cranking out the alcohol so our farmers have markets for their 4 billion bushels of corn and the 15 billion gallons on the RFS that's the floor right now. We should extend the off-ramp for at least another 10 years because right now our ethanol industry probably has been set back 10 years. So let's look at how Congress can react there and continue to have a market for our product that we spent so much time, personal equity, personal investment, farmers, C-store operators like my family business over the last several decades. So absolutely we need to make sure that ethanol doesn't die right now. Thank you.
Congressman Steve King.
Well, the question was, will I? And the answer is, I have. I have relentlessly and for a long time. I'll continue to do that. I take you back a little ways when we worked a long time to get E15 year-round. I went out to see the president one-on-one in the Oval Office, except for some of the chirping in the background that I got from his chief of staff on pushing for year-round E15. Into that meeting, I concluded that he was going to announce it. 2 days later, he announced year-round E15. Then, the following May, we finally got the administrator of the EPA to finalize the rules. And when he did that, the last minute he came on WHO and said, okay, now I've got this done, we can do year-round E15. But also, in came 5 more small refinery exemptions. When that happened, I put out a statement that said it looks like whenever we get one thing that supports renewable fuel, there's an offset that goes back to reward petroleum industry. When I saw that, I saw into the mind, I think, of Wheeler, the administrator. So I wrote 2 bills. One of them was a bill that required that any future small refinery exemptions had to blend in the gallons into the other refineries in the country so there was no net loss. And the other bill was that plus going back to recover the 4.2 billion gallons that had already been waived by the SREs, the small refinery exemptions. So yes, I have done that. I'll keep doing that. And there is no stronger voice in the House of Representatives in support of renewable fuels than me. The first bill that I introduced in Congress became law, and it became the small refinery exemption, the small refinery subsidy for the ethanol producers and biodiesel, that became law. So there's no question about where I stand on renewable fuels. It's been aggressive, but we don't have the votes in the House because they turned it against us politically. The dream team of petroleum lobby came in, and they swept through that Congress and turned them over. Now I find myself surrounded by anti-ethanol, pro-petroleum people. And by the way, they're going broke too, just like the ethanol industry are, so it's a bad fight right now, but I'll continue to be in it.
Thank you. Stephen Reed.
My answer to the question is yes, I will support ethanol. The reason I say yes is because our government made a commitment to the ethanol industry. And just like myself, when I make a commitment, I follow through. But I think this is a perfect example. As you recall, one of my opening statements was limited government. I want to get the government out of our lives. And what happens when you have these big government programs, whether it be ethanol, wind, stimulus packages, they start out well-intended, but then the rules change along the way. And either the government makes changes through lobbyists or special interest groups, or you have other causes creating differences of opinion, and so then what happens is the field is not level. I want to level the playing field. I can't tell you the number of farmers, ranchers, producers that want to get the government out of their lives. I want to put the profitability back in the hands of the farmers. We have to create more markets and diversity for our farmers, rather than having them so much reliance on global trade of corn and soybeans and ethanol. I want to get the government, I want to restrict the government going forward from getting involved in all of our industries. That's what I intend to do, and I want to get the government, limit the government's scope.
Very good. Randy Feenstra.
I will use all my powers to help the ethanol industry and the biofuel industry. We need somebody on the Ag Committee, somebody that has a voice, somebody that can get things done. This is a bipartisan committee. This is an area that we can get things done. The small refinery waivers, it's a shame, and they must stop. We must get rid of Administrative Wheeler. It's out of control. It's crushing our ethanol plants. Renewable fuel mandates, we must increase the volume of biofuels. I have helped write a bill over the last several years, and it's going to get passed this year, that we're going to go in Iowa from E10 to E15 at all pumps, so we can pump E15 instead of E10 in all our cars. Why? So we can increase the volume of biofuels. The other thing is, that people don't talk about much, is how important ethanol is to our ag industry. How much crops it takes, and it raises the commodity price. You know what else it does? It creates distiller grains for our cattle. When we don't have ethanol production, we don't have distiller grains. We don't have this for our cattle producers. And this creates just another struggle for our farming community. You know, you look today, our farmers, they're talking about bankruptcy. My family, my in-laws, my kids and I, we regularly work on the farm. And it's awful hard to see my family and my in-laws wondering what's going to happen. And it's because of the producers that are getting their shaft by the packers. It's because ethanol is no longer what it is today, that they can't get distiller grains. All these things coupled together makes the farming community looking at the verge of bankruptcy. I will do everything for our ethanol producers. That's why I'm endorsed by the biofuel industry, because I'm passionate about this issue.
Thank you very much. Anybody here for a 30-second opportunity here? Otherwise, we will move to closing comments.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. I learned a few things here tonight. I learned that 3 of my opponents don't believe the New York Times, one of them does. I learned that one of them is supported by the Rhino PAC, the Anti-Heartbeat PAC, the Amnesty PAC, and the Gambling PAC. And that tells you a little bit, birds of a feather do flock together. There is no way to maintain your integrity if that's the people that are behind you. This is a swamp in Washington, D.C. And I've been under pressure because I have taken the swamp on. And if you want to look at Donald Trump and see what he's facing, I'm facing the same thing on a bit smaller scale. But you know this, I have never let you down. Not on any matter of principle, not on anything that has to do with the platform or the Republican Party. I have run to the sound of the guns every time, and I've not only walked towards the fire, I've walked through the fire. And I'm deeply tempered by that experience. And I can face those people down because I'm right and they're wrong. And they know it by now. And I will say one other thing is that on April 20th, Kevin McCarthy and I reached an agreement that he would advocate to the steering committee to put all of my committees back with all of my seniority, because there's no argument against my fact-check document. I have disproven all of those allegations. They were false from the beginning. You saw General Flynn, for all of that time that he went under this, for the $6 million and plus it's cost him. But he's being exonerated now. And when Congress comes back into session, when the steering committee can be brought together, I have Kevin McCarthy's word that then that will be my time for exoneration.
Thank you very much. Next up, Stephen Reeder.
My background has given me business and financial experience. I have balanced checkbooks and made sure that I was always profitable. There's no reason why our federal government can't do the same. I am a huge advocate for education. One of my daughters is an educator, and I want to make sure that our children have the best education that they can. And that means that the responsibility lies with the parents, the teachers, and the school boards. I want to get the federal government completely out of our education. I'm also, one thing I heard when Bret and I were going around getting nomination petitions signed was that we have a mental health issue. I want to address that. And my other daughter, Anna, is in the mental health field. And I want to make sure that that issue is addressed. I was raised in a Christian family, and I want to make sure that the sanctity of life is protected. That's why I've always been pro-life, and I will protect the unborn under any circumstances. And more importantly, I want to make sure that the women that may have an unexpected pregnancy, that they are taken care of, they're counseled and have therapy, and that adoption is an option for them. I spoke to a woman in Carroll County who gave up her baby for adoption years ago and didn't meet that child until he was an adult. And he told her the first thing he said to her was, "Thank you for not killing me." And so I will stand strong for pro-life, and I will stand with our president. Our president is the first one that stood up there and defended life and has been a strong advocate for Judeo-Christian values. That's what Iowa's about. I know the moral fabric of Iowa, and I will go and represent the people of Iowa and stand strong with our president. He needs another business ally in Washington to work with him on his agenda.
Thank you, Stephen. Senator Randy Feenstra.
Thanks for this wonderful debate this evening. As I said earlier, I am a Christian, I'm a husband, I'm a father of 4 children, and I am a constitutional conservative Republican. I'm running for Congress because we in the 4th District need a seat at the table, a seat that can be proven, effective, and have a conservative voice. To me, this election is about real results and not campaign rhetoric. I served my community in the Iowa Senate for the past 12 years, where I've delivered on numerous conservative policies. I delivered on tax cuts. I delivered for the pro-life movement. I delivered for the Second Amendment rights. Finally, I delivered on the protections against illegal immigration. Alongside Trump, we will build the wall. We will secure our borders. We will buy and build American. We will defund Planned Parenthood. We will protect Trump's tax cuts. We'll be unwavering defending the Second Amendment and going against all red flag laws. Our district President Trump deserve effective conservative leaders in Congress. Thank you for this time this evening. I am honored to have your vote. Thank you.
Jeremy Taylor.
Well, thank you for this opportunity tonight. I do want to say I appreciate Congressman King's service, and I hope that my tone and tenor in this race has honored his service while making the case at the same time that I believe that it's time, and it's time for a constitutionalist who can lead. In Congress, I will fight for life at JeremyTaylorForCongress.com. You can see our 10-part Defend Life plan, for which Martin Cannon, the lead counsel of Iowa's Heartbeat Bill, endorsed my candidacy. I'll stand for balanced budgets and term limits, the Second Amendment, repealing Obamacare, a secure border, and for our ag community and for freedom. When I served in communist Vietnam as a missionary, I learned what it meant to live without freedom. Faith leaders being persecuted, freedom of speech harassed, and the government dictating the number of children he had. So I stand beside our president when he says America will never be a socialist country. No one will fight harder for this. And as a chaplain, I've served with faith leaders alongside them in Romania who lost their brothers and sisters in Christ, who never had the personal freedoms that we oftentimes take so for granted. My wife and I were once on a train in Vietnam and met a man who was in the very re-education camp where her dad fell in 1986. And he whispered to us, America is very good. He said he once secretly listened to a radio of this hope, this beacon, this city on a hill that Ronald Reagan spoke of, and the hope that one day he too would be able to come here and enjoy the freedoms that we have. Well, Ronald Reagan said, this is the last stand on earth. And we must fight and preserve to protect our freedoms. That's what I hope to do. That's why I feel called to serve, to stand in the gap for such a time as this. And I'd be honored to do that for you and your family.
Final candidate and closing comments tonight will be Bret Richard.
You know, we should have more debates, and this was very helpful. I think it gave a lot of people a chance to hear from us. When you decide who to vote for, consider my education as a civil engineer, my service in the Army, my role in a family business that employed over 300 people. As an engineer, I was taught how to look at problems logically and solve them. In the Army, my job was to lead others to a common objective. In my family business, well, that was about creating opportunity, working together and listening to you, the public. Can you think of any place that needs those skills more than our dysfunctional federal government? I'm running because you deserve someone who focused on solving problems. I'm running because you deserve someone who put you, your family, and your neighbors at the center of everything he does. We elected an unpolished businessman for a reason. We knew this country's future was too important to trust just any politician that would be controlled by mainstream elite establishment values. It's time for Iowans to change D.C. Thank you for the sponsors, thank you for everybody, my fellow candidates, thank you. But most of all, thank you to every Iowan listening. I appreciate your support. I ask for your vote now or on June 2nd. And my cell phone is 712-579-4753. You can email me, you can go to Facebook or richardsforcongress.com. I'm the most accessible candidate in this race. I look forward to talking to you very soon. Thank you.
Is that the number to call? I can see.
Thank you very much. To all of our candidates